Parenthood employee. This is new audio out from another video, the 7th video, where this Planned Parenthood employee is talking about taking the brain out of a baby while the baby was still alive. Listen.
So then I hear her call my name. Hey, Ollie, come over here. I want you to see something kind of cool. It's kind of neat. So I'm over here, and this is the moment I see it. I'm just flabbergasted. This is the most gestated fetus and closest thing to a baby I've seen. And she's like, okay, I want to show you something. So she has one of her instruments, and she just taps the heart, and it starts beating. And I'm sitting here, and I'm looking at this fetus, and its heart is beating.
Fetus.
And I don't know what to think.
Is there still circulation in the heart once you isolate it?
So, so there are times when after the procedure is done that the heart actually is still beating.
They induce fetal demise at about 20 weeks, 18 to 20 weeks, and so they inject digoxin into the fetus.
Right. I was actually going to ask you about it because I want to make sure there's no digoxin on my
No.
Providers who use digoxin use it for one of two reasons. There is a group of people who just use it so that they have no risk of violating the federal abortion ban. You induce the demise before you do the procedure. Nobody's going to say you did a live, whatever the federal government calls it.
I don't know if you could catch everything they were saying there, but they use this digoxin to kill the baby just so that they won't be accused of doing a partial birth abortion. So it's horrific stuff. This
is Mengele stuff. This is truly Mengele stuff.
You might say about the former employee, well, maybe she's disgruntled or she made this up, but the story she just told about seeing the beating heartbeat of
is just verified.
It was just verified by one of the doctors who say, yeah, sometimes they're still beating.
And they open up the skull and take the brain out.
Imagine living in that maze of technicality every day.
Oh my gosh!
Every day you come in and
you become dead.
Yeah,
I mean, there's a show that I've wanted to pitch to HBO for a very long time, and I'm just never going to get around to it. So it's free; you can take it. But it's a horror story, and the way it starts, every episode starts with a scene like this. A guy taking people, and in one episode, he's taking everybody and he's rounding them up into the gas chamber in Germany, and he's closing the door, and you see through the window, you see the people pounding on the glass as the gas starts to go, and he lights up a cigarette, and he's just completely oblivious to all of it, and it goes into the title. Then the rest of the episode is him at home, and he's a normal guy. And very few times during each episode, you will see him. He'll go in and he's a guard, so he'll have to go in and he'll have to drag the bodies into the ovens, or he'll have to go kill somebody, or he'll have to go assist Mengele in something. And the whole point of the show is, how do you become this monster? How can you be a regular person? Because those people, they went home to their families. If you listen to the children of the guy who ran Auschwitz, I've been to Auschwitz. Were you guys with me? No, you weren't.
No.
The commandant's home is literally, how far would you say the corner of this studio is from me?
I mean, 30 yards.
30 yards, 40 yards. His home is 30 yards, or the beginning of his property. His home is probably 100 yards away from the gas chambers. Okay? His children were in the home. They had little bunny rabbits. At one point, a little bunny rabbit escaped, and one of the prisoners who was there grabbed the bunny rabbit. Now, wanted to eat the bunny rabbit, but grabbed the bunny rabbit and was actually bringing it back to the cage, and the father, the commandant, beat the guy to death. Okay? The children's bunny rabbit. That happened. Now, if you listen to the interviews with the children of that guy, they say it was a normal upbringing. It was a normal family. How? You have to cross all kinds of lines. You have to get into... These guys are no different. I'm sorry, but these doctors who are saying, hey, I want to show you something interesting, and we're going to make the heartbeat, and I'm going to take the brain out of this living child... You've crossed so many technicalities and closed so many doors so your subconscious doesn't torture you every night. You're a monster. You are truly a monster, and you are no different than the guy who closed the door on the gas chamber. No different. They will tell you they're not monsters, too. They tried to say that. Many of them got away with it.
And a lot of them said, too, it was just accomplishing a task.
I was just doing a job.
Following orders, whatever, they all said the same stuff.
It was legal at the time. It's what we believed was right at the time. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, there are universal right and wrongs.
Yeah, I don't know how Planned Parenthood isn't closed already. How's it not closed?
25 years ago, it would have been.
Yeah, I think it would have. Mm-hmm. I think it would have. I think we're so, like you said, we're so dead inside that it's not affecting people.
Today is a great day to say you are witnessing Scripture actually coming and being fulfilled. In those days, men's hearts will fail them. What has happened to us? Our hearts have failed us. You have a woman, and you have the evidence that they did it, and they do it. They are operating on children, poisoning them to death, Mengele, and they're taking them out, starting the heart. Look, I can just tap and start the heart. Oh, and I take the brain out while the heart is beating. Why are you taking the brain out of this fully developed baby? I need some experimental tissue. Mengele. Men's heart has failed them.
And again, the Mengele and the entire system of the Nazi medical community, and you call it a medical community because
it was.
All of their advancements are still used today
in hospitals every single day.
Yeah, they've gone through. There's been a controversy over the past couple decades of trying to rename these ailments and treatments because they were named after actual Nazi doctors.
Correct.
And, so you can advance medicine if you have no feel for human life. You can make a lot of medical advancement. That doesn't make it right.
Right. I mean, the guy who actually did the experiments on Jews, that actually he would take the patients out into the camp, and he would, in the middle of the winter, it was freezing, he would strip them, tie them to a bed, and then he would pour cold water on them. And then he would time them. And then he would pour hot water on them, and he would time, and he'd see what the body could take in cold and hot water out in them and exposed to the elements. Okay, and he would time it. Then later, we were having airplanes that were going higher and higher, and so we needed pressurized cabins. Well, how do you think we found out about pressurized cabins? The Nazis. This particular doctor loaded the cabin up without pressure. The pressurized cabin was for the pilots. But there was an unpressurized cabin, and they would fly up and see how long it took before people's heads popped. We would see what would happen if you fly up at this altitude. What would happen if you flew at this altitude? What would happen if you had depressurization quickly? He tortured and killed people in airplanes. They were all Jewish. They were all Jewish prisoners. The reason why we have pressurized cabins is because of the tests that the Nazi doctors did on Jews. And here is what happened to that guy. How do you think that doctor died? You guys know this story?
No. Hopefully in a depressurized cabin.
You would think so, right? He actually was the prisoner that was killed before Dietrich Bonhoeffer. Now, how did that happen? He occupied the same cell as Dietrich Bonhoeffer in a concentration camp. He went from the doctor doing the experiments to a prisoner on death row at the concentration camp. Does anybody know why?
Mm-mm.
Because he so believed in what he was doing. When he developed all of this information on how high you have to be to stop the pressurization and to stop people's heads from popping, he released it. He put it out. He published a paper, and it went out worldwide. Hitler called him in and said, "What the hell are you doing?" And he said, "I'm saving lives. This is important information. This will save lives." And he said, "We're saving German lives, nobody else's life." He was arrested, put in a concentration camp, and he was the prisoner that was executed just before Dietrich Bonhoeffer.
After all that great research. Wow.
Yeah.
After all he did.
After all he did.
After all he did. Hard to get really sympathetic, isn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Since he kind of had it coming.
It was, what was really hard was Dietrich Bonhoeffer was in a cell with him and a woman who was a double agent for the Germans, and she was caught as a double agent. She was a prostitute and a really wicked woman, and she was also in the cell. And the doctor and the prostitute apparently were grotesque in the cell. And Dietrich Bonhoeffer was in with them, and he had to try to preach to them. And he tried his best to say, you know, what little life we have left doesn't need to be this way. It ends ugly. It ends ugly for a nation